Okay, let's talk about wet tropical forests. Um, this is perhaps my own bias, but these are the what I expect offhand tropical forests to be like. Um, Probably that's just reflecting my expectation that tropical forests will be extremely diverse, and they are. They can be extremely diverse systems, and the wet forests tend to be hyper diverse, the most diverse forests known. Um, these are highly aseasonal forests, and I would say that tropical rainforests are actually less common than kinds of forest, true tropical rainforest where it's rainy all year. That's less common than, say, wet seasonal tropical forests. And the distinctions are pretty clear when you're there in them. But for our purposes, I would say that most of these systems are we will be interested in, or that we would really want to kind of consider within this conversation are systems that are on a gradient from aseasonally wet, meaning wet pretty much all the time, to highly seasonal forests that transition into dry forests. Now, even the most aseasonal wet forests, rainforests, tend to have a wet period of the year and then a really wet period of the year. So there's still some seasonality with precipitation. Anyway, let's look at a couple of them. Here's one example from Costa Rica. This is La Selva forest in Costa Rica. This is the wettest forest, tropical forest I have ever been to, and its diversity reflects that. This is a place where you would find glowing mushrooms or wild insects, just crazy insects, some of which are dangerous. Huge trees. La Selva is an old growth forest. It's probably the only classified as true old growth forest that I have visited in the tropics. And it is distinct because of that. Um, just like the old growth forest of the temperate region, the trees tend to be large. There are these unique structures, large dead trees and so forth, that are important for wildlife. For example, this tree that you see on the right with the big hollow heart rot scar in it, that's good habitat for these big bats that live in the area. These kinds of forests are distributed across the New World, the neotropics. They range in terms of their degree of how wet they are all year. And this is an example from lowland Chiapas, which is gets rain most of the year, but has clearly a very wet season and then a drier season. As one moves into higher elevations, and you can in these wet forests, this is above La Selva, you can encounter these really unique cloud forests. I'm not quite sure that I would call them they're montane. We're going to come back to montane tropical forests here, but these are wet, cooler forests that are oftentimes inundated by fog, hence their name. And here's just a couple other examples. This one's from the north of Vietnam. This is a hot, relatively wet forest, but it still has a clear, very wet season and then a drier season. For example, when I visited, there was very little rain. There was clearly there were definitely rain events, but it was less common than at other times of the year. I just want to show this photo also. This is a eucalyptus plantation. This area has been converted into a plantation for the purpose of production of fiber. So tropical forests are used for many economic purposes. And the last example I'll show you is from the island of Panay near Iloilo. This is getting up into the mountains. These are seasonally wet forests. When I was there in December, we did have a tsunami, but that was pretty much it for rain. Being in country for, over 2 weeks and having one rain event. And that was, I think, the only one that had happened pretty much that month. So, there's in these forests, they're warm. They have a period of year that is extremely wet, and then a period of year that is relatively dry. And that kind of variation encompasses what we would call these seasonally wet forests or rainforests in the tropics.